Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be doing an in-depth review of the SmallRig Cage for the Fuji X-H2 and X-H2S. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. So if you've been a professional photographer or videographer for say more than 5 minutes, chances are you've run across some sort of an accessory from SmallRig. SmallRig makes a galaxy of accessories for just about any camera manufacturer or any camera model. They've quickly established themselves as a company that can take your basic camera and fully deck it out into a rig. One area where they've practically cornered the market is in camera cages. I've already done a review of the SmallRig Black Mamba cage for the Canon EOS R7. You can check out a link to that in the description below. And in that video, I show how the SmallRig Black Mamba cage makes a wonderful sidekick to the Canon EOS R7, but let's see how well SmallRig did for Fuji. The SmallRig X-H2 and X-H2S camera full cage is an aluminum alloy camera rig with NATO rails, a quick release plate for ARRI Swiss mounts, and it supports fully horizontal and vertical shooting. It comes with many threaded holes that you can mount your accessories to. It has a cold shoe mount that you can put accessories on, like microphones and monitors and things like that. It also has a multi-tool that is held up with a magnet. It also has a mount up here that goes into where your threading is for your straps, which helps stabilize the body to the cage. So what do you pay for all of this? Well, it comes in at a street price of $89 US. All that sounds great on paper. All of that looks kind of cool, but let's go test it out in the field and see how it actually performs. So interestingly, when you take the battery compartment off, there is this little lever. There we go. All right, let's try this out. I found myself in the streets of Houston, Texas. I thought their Art Deco City Hall seemed like a fun place to start. I tested out the handheld attachments, the grip, and the general overall ergonomics of the cage. It feels quite comfortable, and it seemed like the only time the shots weren't smooth is, well, when I wasn't smooth, and that's on me. Thanks to universal compatibility, whether you're using third-party products or SmallRig products, everything is compatible with each other. It's able to be built out utilizing pretty much any company's threadings because they all pretty much use universal threadings. And I found that in general, the cage never really got in the way. My hands were always where they needed to be, and that's usually the mark of a well-designed cage. I tried it out in 3 decked out configurations. The first configuration is kind of a smaller handheld hybrid rig where I'm using a iPhone as a camera monitor. I find that this is my really fast run and gun rig. Then the second configuration is fully decked out with a V-mount battery. I use this for longer shoots where I don't want to constantly change batteries. And then when I want to just go shoot street photography or do something fast and I don't want to take the cage off, I found that the cage wasn't really getting in the way, so I just took off all the attachments, I roll with it, and it felt quite comfortable. Okay, so you saw my field test of the SmallRig cage. Now let's talk about the things that I like about this cage. One of the things I like is that this side right here, this rail, it actually kind of acts as a second grip, which I think is kind of helpful because sometimes I don't want to put like a handle on the side because I don't want to have that extra weight and that extra space in my bag. So having this sticking out kind of acts as a second handle, and I find that I can get some pretty stable shots this way. I also love the compatibility. There's so many accessories out there you can buy for it. I can actually take accessories like my handle that came on my Black Mamba cage for my EOS R5 and my EOS R7 and just attach it to this cage for my Fuji, and they're compatible with each other. So if I don't need to be using cameras simultaneously, I can just take parts off of one of my camera cages and put it on another camera cage, and that saves me money. I love the multi-tool that's built into it. I actually, as I've said, I own 3 cages from SmallRig, one for the R5, one for the R7, and then this one for the X-H2, X-H2S, and I have yet to lose the multi-tool. The magnet on the bottom seems to hold it up just fine. I've taken it out into the field. I've put it through some pretty rugged situations. And when I get home, the multi-tool is still stuck to the bottom. If you're worried about this magnet not being strong enough, maybe this tool will fall out. I can tell you from my personal experiences that owning 3 of these cages, I haven't had any issues. As far as ergonomics are concerned, yes, it makes this camera a little larger, but in all honesty, it still feels pretty good. And I find that there are more places I can actually grab the camera when I'm picking it up. So I might like grab it from here or grab it like from here when I'm just picking it up off of a counter. There's just more places for me to grip it, and I have pretty clumsy hands, so I'm not going to complain if something gives me more ways to grip the camera. And now I find with this added size on the right side, it may make it kind of closer to the size of my EOS R7 or my EOS R5. There's not a huge difference between pre-cage and post-cage, but if you're watching this and you're looking to get a cage, I'm sure you understand from a common sense standpoint that adding stuff to your camera is going to add a little bit of size and a little bit of weight. I will say from a weight standpoint, it's fairly light. I don't really feel like my camera's much heavier, so that's not really an issue. Another cool thing about it is that if you have larger hands, there is an extension at the bottom. So if you have big hands, now I have average size hands, and without the cage, all of my hands can fit on the X-H2. However, if you do have the larger, beefier fingers, you'll be happy to know that there's an extension on this, and so your hands can fit on it a little better. Another thing from an ergonomic standpoint is when I'm looking through the viewfinder, I was a little concerned that this bar right here was going to get in the way because I have eye detect on and off assigned to my record button when I'm taking stills, and then my ISO button is right behind that. However, when I don't have the cage on, sometimes with my fumbly fingers, I accidentally click one or the other. I actually appreciate this bar here because when I'm looking through the viewfinder and I put my finger up to it, I can actually identify where the bar is, and then I can go forward to hit my eye detect, and I can go backward to hit my ISO. So it actually kind of helps guide my finger to the correct button. So I doubt that the engineers at SmallRig were thinking about that, but it ended up being a result of having this bar here where it currently sits. If you're a videographer, I'm not sure if that's going to be a benefit to you, but for someone who shoots stills and likes to use his viewfinder, I find that to be a really cool feature. I also like the fact that none of my cables are obstructed by this rail. I like the fact that none of my SD card slots are obstructed by the other rail. I like the fact that I can access the battery. Do keep in mind that there is like this little lever that pulls out. There's an ARRI-Swiss mount on the bottom as well, so you can just take it and put it right into an ARRI-Swiss mount on a tripod. There's no reason to actually put anything additionally on here. I do have to do it for my my DJI gimbal. Sometimes I have to put something on the bottom here, but in general, if I'm just using a tripod, I don't have to take any extra accessories, and that's really appreciated. I like the construction quality of the aluminum alloy. It feels rugged. It feels like it'll protect my camera if I bump into things. I also like the fact that I can see my screens really well. There's no obstructions there. However, let's talk about a few things that I wish that they would fix about the cage. For one, if you look at your control dial, your PASM dial, I personally have always tried to grab my PASM dial at about 12 o'clock with my index finger and like 6 o'clock with my thumb. And then I turn it because I can quickly do a long throw of the PASM dial and get from like custom function 1 to custom function 7. On this camera, they give you 7 custom functions, and I use every single one of them as a hybrid shooter because I'm doing a YouTube channel, so I do a lot of stills, I do a lot of video, and I find that the placement of the cold shoe on this, unfortunately, obstructs how easy it is to turn this dial. That's something that I don't like about it, and without any accessories mounted to this cold shoe, it's already hard enough to turn this dial. Now, it is possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's actually very possible. It's just not as convenient as it is without a cage on it. And when you add something like a camera monitor or a microphone to the cold shoe mount, it actually makes it really difficult to get in and turn your PASM dial. So that is something I wish that they had changed. You can even see that there's a little bit of space here where they maybe could have pushed the cold shoe mount forward. Even a quarter of an inch would have made all the difference when turning this dial. So, I rate a well-designed cage based off of whether or not the cage obstructs anything. And I will say that this is one place where I think that the cage does obstruct the ergonomics and the functionality. And so I'd have to give it a negative mark for that. Another thing is when you are taking the camera and you are putting it in for the first time, there's like this little peg that sticks out. You actually have to unscrew that peg. Unfortunately, when you open up the box, it doesn't come with a manual. So there's no manual, physical manual that tells you that, hey, this peg needs to be unscrewed. I just kind of had to figure out on my own. But you do need to unscrew that peg with the multi-tool, because if you don't, you may scrape the bottom of your brand new X-H2 or X-H2S, and I doubt that's something that you actually want to do. So those two things were really the only things I could find wrong with it. Overall, I would say that the pros far outweigh the cons. It is a very good product. I do highly recommend it. Like I said, make sure you understand that you need to take that screw out. Make sure that you understand that there will be a little bit of an obstruction here and that you may just have to click the PASM dial one thing at a time instead of clicking through several things at a time just because of the obstructions. It makes it awkward for your hands. But buy this with confidence. Honestly, for $89, I do think this is a cool product, especially when you look at all the accessories that exist for it. And so definitely take advantage of those, build out your rig, customize it how you want to. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I thank you for watching today's video. I hope you found it helpful. I hope you found it useful. If you did, tell me about it in the comments below. What do you love and hate about this product? Also, tell me in the comments below. And if you enjoy this video and videos like it on my channel, I humbly ask you, click the subscribe button below. I appreciate the support, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.